Hey, what's up? How's it going? In this video, I want to talk to you guys about bases. Bases and making rock bases. Thanks to, who was it? Let's give him some credit. Zach Harrison. Probably got that name wrong in the way I said his last name, but that's what I'm going to talk about today, is making rock bases, because he messaged me literally as I was just about to start this rock base. Now, you can do rocks so many different ways. I've done them so many different ways, and the way I always think about doing them is making it consistent. Being consistent and consistency of finish is one of the most important things that I think in looking for when I'm judging, and also at the same time making sure that your piece is overall consistently finished. So for rocks, you can do kind of like tons of choppy lines where you just chop, or you can edge out pieces. So I'm gonna show you some little techniques and tricks of how I do kind of a shaly style of rock base. Because you know, when you're doing a rock base, you can change the way your piece sits. You know, you put it on an angle, rain goes out of it, but make sure that there's runoff areas for the rocks. Now, you can do, say you have a base like this, and you know, you wanted to just do that pattern of triangles and stuff like that. You can just go in with your chainsaw and do an upcut there and an undercut there, downwards and up, and create kind of like a wedge, you know? And do that all over, and you can layer them, stagger them, any which way, as long as, you know, you can do rounded, you can do little. It all depends on kind of the idea that you're going for and how you want to piece them together. And I just want to be clear too, one thing to think about when you're doing the base on any piece is it's just as important as the rest of the piece. You know, it is the thing that I always have left to the last minute because I want to get the main focal point of the composition done first. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm done. I just got to get the base done. I think the base is a very important part because it's just as much of the part of the sculpture. So yeah, we fly through bases, but at the same time, make sure you take a little extra time. And same with trees. You know, you can do an owl on a tree or an eagle on a tree stump, and that just changes the direction of the bark. There's so many different ways to do barks and different ways to do you know, trees and how the trees are set in. But for rocks, you know, I like to do just chainsaw and be just kind of make it choppy. And then when you're finished, you're gonna burn it. You can use paint. I'll do paint sometimes, like a brown or a black, or, you know, depending on what color it is. And then I just get it on the insides, and then I burn it and then sand it. So we're gonna go through that right now. Let's get onto it, and we'll do this base and we'll talk about it. All right, let's do it. So for my big bases, I'm gonna use the 24-inch Toonie, 620 PW, 3/8 low pro chain, and just start kind of marking it out. So let's get her going. Get rid of the sapwood. You don't need it, and depending on how you want your base, it's totally up to you. Could go in, could go out. You could scoop out parts, you could put an animal in here, whatever you want. This is just a rock base. So there you go. There's a couple of ideas of just placing the rocks. And you see how I'm like cutting them in and then making them kind of all interconnect kind of. If you're able to do that, then you can just put some chop into there. And when we get to it, I'm gonna do the rest of the base. I'll just throw it on time lapse, and there's no point in me showing you the same thing over and over and over again, but I'll do it in time lapse, put on some tunes, and then come back to the finishing part where I'm gonna probably put some color and put a little light black into the accent lines, like the power lines here, what I call them. That's what Foltz always called them, so that's what I call them. And separate the two, and then when I have them separated, I'll burn it, and then I'll get the angle grinder out and buff it out. Boom, done. Okay, so now we're at the point where it's pretty much done. You know, I did all kinds of different approaches here for you guys to see. You know, my thoughts are when you're doing these is to make sure that your lines make sense. Like if it's gonna go in here, it connects, and they're rocks, right? They're rocks laying on top of each other. And when they're laying on top of each other, they have to feel the impact of like squished together, right? Because it's a lot of weight that's there. So when you're doing this kind of rock style shale laying on top of each other, make sure you kind of think about that, right? You're telling a story, and that's kind of what every chainsaw sculpture is telling a story essentially. And you know, things have weight, and weight sits on one another, and just like movement. So let's talk about this in chainsaw like choppy marks, right? A lot of these are clearly chainsaw marks. Now, separating chainsaw marks to a stylistic approach to rock basing would be to look for a piece that is something that's not intentionally there, or a directional change, like this one. Like I'll fix that because that is clearly like an overcut, or here. That just doesn't make sense. If it's going with the direction of what you're trying to accomplish, then it kind of makes sense and it will sand out. And in the competition, you want to make sure you kind of tick off those boxes by cleaning up things like this, you know, like that. But in a commission piece that you're trying to get done for a movie that's got to get filmed next in 3 days, you have to find ways to hide things. So now with these overcuts, I'm just gonna go, they have a specific thing they're looking for. They wanted black. Ideally, I would almost go mudslide this satin with this black. I probably will do both, but I'll just go along the lines here and lightly kind of hit different zones. And that's gonna hide a ton of mistakes too, right? And it creates shadow, and you know, that overcut now is basically gone, and makes the fish kind of pop out a little more. And I'll do the same thing kind of in the back here, and then clean all that up, because really you just kind of, you don't have to go crazy either. You don't need to make it like pure line. You're just trying to show that it's a shadow. And remember that when you're doing a shadow, you know, it's light that cascades down, so it's gonna be darker on the bottom end of stuff. And then I'll do it kind of all over the place. When I sand it out with the angle grinder, these lines will really shine through, and some of it will stay dark and some won't. So you can see now I'm just gonna hide over these chainsaw marks because I don't care. This is gonna be for a TV show. I can't say which one, but I will later, unless I wait for this video to come out. No, this video won't come out, but this eagle will come out later. Then I'll hopefully have the clip, if I'm legally allowed. But yeah, so I'm just going over it. hiding the mistakes, and you know, highlighting some stuff, creating some shadow in here, a little darker, doesn't hurt. And then we'll burn it and we'll sand it out. So let's cut to a little burny burn and then a little sandy sand, and that'll be at the end of when I'm done, because I'll do that the last because I still have chainsaw work to do, and the oil will come down onto the base, so I don't want to have to sand it twice. There's a good little tip for you. Finish at the top, work your way down, then you don't have to get oil on it. And so yeah, so now I got to finish a bunch of stuff up at the top, and then we'll come back to this video and finish it up with sanding it out, and talk about anything I think about while I'm doing this. All right, cool. Okay, so we're at the point now where we've got everything dialed in. We just have to put in a screw, do a little bit of sanding, but we're done with chainsaws. So we're doing final things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a big Makita 5-inch disc, kind of the see-through ones. This one right here. I like this one because I can see through it. And I'm just gonna go over it. I'm gonna go over it right now, and you'll be able to see like how it actually sands itself out. What I like about using this grinder and going over it is I can see through the holes here. You can see through what you're carving, and I'm just gonna buff over it, because these chainsaw marks, though they look rough right now, you give it a nice buff and it looks really good. And it has a nice like rough kind of unfinished finish look to it. Then you can go over it with the Sandiflex. Whole piece I'll go over with the Sandiflex. But I really, really like the way that this will kind of show different contrast, colors, and textures, all from everything we've done. Really just experiment, you know? There's no right or wrong way to do anything, but there's techniques, and like I said earlier in the video, it's consistency of finish. So whatever you decide to do, just make sure you're consistent the whole way through. If a line goes one way or if a line goes another way, just make sure that they all make sense to the piece as a whole, the story you're trying to tell and the story you're trying to convey to the audience of your sculpture. So the wood is a bit wet, but at the same time, hopefully you can see that this is kind of showing textures and layers of what you're trying to accomplish in the piece. So I think if you kind of stick to a plan where you're experimenting, having fun, but just try to like tell the story, you know, like the lines make sense. This is a very effective way to carve rocks. My name is Ryan Cook. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, because there's gonna be a ton of videos coming out. Yeah, be sure to watch Cut Above. I'm gonna be promoting that one hard. No, as I spit. It's the reality of reality when you're doing YouTube. Awesome guys, thank you. See ya.